Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome to a new reaction. This is The History and Government of the Tri-State Area, a Phineas and Ferb theory by Guy Murray. And this was suggested on my Discord server by Mort Bobbius. And, God, Phineas and Ferb. That was definitely one of those shows that I tried keeping up with, always like trying to see the new episodes when they came out, or at least when I thought they came out. Because as I've said before, I was very bad at like even just remembering TV schedules were even a thing for the longest time. And the sad thing is, I have not yet had the time to check out the newest series that's been coming out. That being said, the clips I have seen, the animation has seemed a little weird. But again, that's coming from somebody who hasn't seen full episodes yet, so I'll hold off final judgment until, I see the actual thing. That being said, the Tri-State Area, God, it's one of those, it's like one of those stereotypical, like, nondescript cartoon cities that's just everywhere USA. It's kind of like the big city equivalent of Springfield. And the fact that Doofenshmirtz's brother Heinz, no, was it Heinz? No, Heinz is his name. Roger, that's it, yeah. Roger is the mayor of the Tri-State Area, which, how does that even work? You would have thought that, the Tri-State Area would have a proper name, but again, it's weird. But yeah, again, Phineas and Ferb, pretty long series, a lot of episodes that are both episodic while also keeping, a common lore going throughout the series, so, you gotta give it credit there. So, it's, so from what I do remember, the Tri-State Area actually does have a pretty consistent lore and history to it, which is, really funny. So that's kind of the reason why this video is over an hour long. But at the same time, this is also a theory. So, like, what's that going to be about? Like, is it going to be like Roger isn't actually the mayor? Because, again, there's the big red, red circle with the line crossed through it over him on the thumbnail. Don't know. I'm going to stop wasting time here and actually, get into the video proper. So, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it yet for some reason. Corner video will lead to my Let's Play of the day. And if you like this video or any other video that I make, I'd very much appreciate it if you gave the video a like and subscribe to my channel, because almost 3/4 of the people that watch my channel aren't subscribed, and I'd very much like that to change. Because at this point, I'm just trying to see how close to 7,000 subscribers I can get before the end of the year. But yeah, we'll throw that out of the way. Let's get this thing started then, shall we?
On May 21st, 2025, Phineas and Ferb posted a teaser for the upcoming season 5.
No, released,
and in
yeah.
the very first frame of that teaser, what the hell is that? What are the lore implications of this flag being here? So I sent it to my friend Michael half as a joke, and he pointed out a symbol in the top left of the flag often represents the empire that nation belongs to, which then prompted me to think, is the Tri-State Area even a part of the American Empire? I watched all 136 episodes and 2 movies and took notes the entire time, looking for flags, looking for verbal confirmation that we were in the United States of America, anything that could indicate what nation the Tri-State Area is a part of. And behold, my notes.
Oh, okay, so this is one of those theories that kind of goes off the rails very quickly. Oh, this is going to be fun.
52 pages across 27 sheets of paper, double-sided, and a list where I noted every single flag that I saw throughout the series. The only places we see American flags throughout season 1, we see one in a gift shop at Mount Rushmore. We get the American flag from the moon. Ferb takes the flag from the moon, and we see it in the Mummy dream sequence hanging on a flagpole at school. But again, keep in mind, dream sequence. They're not hanging on any houses. They're not on City Hall. So my initial thought was that maybe the United States had dissolved at this point. It once existed and the people still have a reverence for what the US used to be. Hence why we see flags in gift shops and in dream sequences, but the United States itself no longer exists. We see it in a commercial for Toy Wooden Perry, where it immediately says exotic backgrounds not included while the American flag is on screen. And that's it for season 1. Exotic specifically means originating from another country. Typically it's used for a distant, faraway country. But so far it's interesting that every use of the flag is either commercial, historical, or imagined, but never used in an official setting, almost as if the tri-state area is not a part of the United States.
I mean, I'm trying to think of anything to try to play devil's advocate here. Because, I mean, obviously, the show takes place, or at least looks like it takes place in the United States. And, like, I'm thinking, it's like, oh, maybe it would have been for, you know, syndication around the world and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, again, it very much takes place in the United States. It's made by Disney and stuff like that. So, yeah, why wouldn't you have it? Was it just removed for simplicity's sake so they didn't have to animate it? Waving?
But the United States still exists. The United States probably still exists. But what if the tri-state area was actually evidence of a broken United States? What if the United States broke into 3 distinct sovereign states with the tri-state area at its center? Tri-state, tri-country, tri-sovereign state area.
Okay. Wow. Okay, this is starting to get... okay, so the United States broke into several different states. Okay, so we're getting into a Hearts of Iron 4 Kaiserreich Second Civil War scenario going on here.
So I kept watching, looking for anything to prove this theory correct. But then, finally, on episode 24 of season 2, when Roger has become the mayor, we see that the very first American flag in any sort of official capacity. Now, at first I thought Roger was maybe just using the American flag to harken back to the good old days of America. But from that point on, we see an American flag on City Hall every time it's on screen. Combined with a variety of other small statements made throughout the show, I had to concede Danville, the tri-state area, is in fact a part of the United States. Maybe it was a little far-fetched for me to think that the United States had broken apart by this point, that the American empire was no more.
Okay, I mean, I guess that does make sense. If most of the like flaglessness was, you know, in the first season, again, you know, first seasons usually aren't the best. You know, if a show is going to get better, they usually get better after season 1, after, you know, the studio sees how popular it is and they start funneling more, you know, money into its production. Okay, yeah. I sense a butt coming.
Or was I? Because like I said, I was taking notes. Get out of here. There's a lot of really strange things going on here in the tri-state area. Clear violations of United States federal law. So in an effort to determine both where and why the tri-state area is in its current political situation, seemingly semi-divorced from the United States, I decided to analyze the economic and political state of the tri-state area using 5 categories. Boom. Setting. Boom. Science and history. Boom. Government, law, and order. Boom. Infrastructure and social welfare.
Okay.
And boom, economy and prosperity. So without further ado, let's begin. Hello champions, my name is Guy. Welcome back to our channel. Our channel? It's very important when analyzing any sort of political situation to know the history of what you're analyzing. So we are going to start on setting and science and history. Setting. Phineas and Ferb takes place in 2008, and the tri-state area is located on the Great Salt Lake of Utah. Allow me to explain.
Okay, well, the 2008 part, that I can understand. Like, they actually make like the entire stretch of the original series takes place during the summer, like, of a single summer, and they point out, like, they jokingly point out at several times later in the show that this feels like the longest summer in history and stuff like that. So Yeah, you kind of forget that that's like how this series originally was. The Great Salt Lake, though! Huh?
Starting with the year, because that's the easiest to explain. Candace's birthday takes place on July 11th, and we see, according to this calendar, that is a Friday. July 11th being on a Friday occurred in 2008. The show came out in 2008, and last but not least, in episode 18, when we see Perry being mailed around all over the place as part of his secret super intro, we see the stamp that the mail carrier is stamping all of these letters and packages with reads 2008. Now, interestingly enough, this show can't take place over a single summer. Now, besides the point that there's more than 104 adventures, despite there only being 104 days of summer, and despite the fact that they keep making jokes in the show about the fact that
literally what I just
going
said
on forever, the season 5 trailer shows that they are in middle school. However, Doof 101 shows that they're still going to elementary. In Doof 101, Vanessa has already broken up with Johnny, which happens in the summer of the show, which means there must be at least one summer's worth between Doof 101 and the start of the next season. However, we see in the trailer as well, they're describing the things they did over the summer, things that happened in the show. Aside from just that, it's more than likely that school in Danville starts on September 1st. My reason being, the episode, The Last Day of Summer, shows that Candace is saying she has one more day to bust the boys, and it shows the calendar behind her reads August. In one of the other musical sequences that I can't remember at the moment, Phineas says that school comes back in September. 104 days of summer vacation before September 1st puts us at May 20th. And we actually have 2 episodes that we know take place on May 20th. The Ant Farm episode and When Worlds Collide. We know this because When Worlds Collide takes place the night of the Ant Farm episode. And in the When Worlds Collide episode, Candace and her mom have signed a no-bust contract. Couldn't be me.
Oh, no bust. Okay, I just got that. But I was going to say, again, what was I saying before? Like, Phineas and Ferb, like, it's one of those things where, you know, Phineas and Ferb really did wonders when it came to the way it told its story. Because before, you always very much had, you know, always, like, episodic series or, like, procedural, like, story-driven series. Or in the case of, like, you know, Adventure Time, you had an episodic goofy show that kind of evolved into, you know, something with an ongoing plot. Phineas and Ferb kind of was the direct middle ground from the beginning, where even though each episode is episodic, and you can watch every episode in basically any order, you're still able to, they still have, like, a form of continuity, which is so rare for episodic shows.
2 weeks before the start of the episode, and the contract is dated May 6th, aka May 20th, aka the first day of summer vacation. But we also know that the first day of summer vacation was the roller coaster episode. So now we have 2 episodes that take place on the first day of summer, and that makes perfect sense if you consider the fact that it's actually 2 summers.
I mean, you say that, but you literally, this is a show with time travel canonically, and then there's also Milo's Law, which also had a huge subplot involving time travel, so who's to say that, you know, time is even linear anymore?
I digress. Now, Danville is one of the cities within the tri-state area, and during the show, we learn that it has a population of 241,000 people. It's also shown to be a city that is sometimes directly on the ocean, and other times at the base of a series of green hills, completely surrounded. This seems impossible, right? Maybe not. It all started on season 1, episode 4. Doofenshmirtz invents a machine that can magnetize wood, and he uses it to destroy a local beaver dam. By draining this water into the ocean, he is going to raise the sea level by 2%. If we're talking Pacific or Atlantic, that's a fuck ton of water.
Yes, it definitely is, but, like, if you're talking about, it's not either Pacific or Atlantic. It's Pacific and Atlantic, because, you know, they're connected.
And while Doofenshmirtz's calculations are sometimes fuzzy at best, he has the smarts to at least know draining this water would raise the sea level some amount. This is not that much water. For this amount of water to make any sizable impact, my brain immediately thought maybe that we're not talking about the Atlantic or the Pacific. Maybe we're talking about an inland ocean. So I looked up what are some inland oceans in the world, and of course, that led me to the Great Salt Lake of Utah. While the Great Salt Lake of Utah is technically classified as a lake, when you really look into it, the difference between a saltwater lake and a landlocked sea really comes up to who found it first and who named it. And we actually see in the episode,
I guess it would also matter, the size, because, having, a saltwater pond in the middle of your park does not classify it as an ocean. While at the same time, the Great Lakes are, very much freshwater inland seas. Because, they're just so huge to the point that they actually have their own weather systems.
My Wettest Friend, where they are on Lake Nose. The song they sing, they call it the sea. So there's a good chance that in this world, the difference between a lake and a saltwater sea is a little bit more fluid than it is in the real world. Not to mention the fact, rivers already flow to oceans. If you undam this river, that water's already going to the sea anyway. What big of a difference is it really gonna make? Unless this river was going to the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean, and by breaking it down, you'd be rerouting it into a local sea. Now, we also see on Doofenshmirtz's 100th scale model of the tri-state area, it almost appears to be on an island with 3 bridges connecting it. We also know that Danville has a whole harbor that regularly hosts shipping boats. However, a weird point of order, none of these shipping vessels have any sort of international signifiers. When you look at the UN law of the sea, any shipping vessel that's meant to go through international waters that travels more than 12 miles from the shore of a country needs to contain international signifiers like the country's flag of origin. None of these boats have those, almost as if they are not meant to travel internationally. They are staying within the nation that they are a part of. Multiple times when they travel just outside the city, we are met with desert. In episode 3, it almost looks a little bit like Monument Valley when they're doing their cowboy stuff. Monument Valley, of course, being in Arizona and Utah, I think. And in episode 22, they go to the Jefferson County Art Museum, which is the county that the tri-state area is in, and it's directly adjacent to the unpainted desert. And we see it again in season 3, episode 10. It's desert, almost as if the greenery surrounding the tri-state area is artificial in some way. We'll get there in the science and history section. Another fun point of order. Pelicans. In episode 11, Doofenshmirtz is talking about the things in Danville that annoy him, and one of the things he mentions is pelicans. Not only do pelicans go to the Salt Lake area of Utah, specifically white pelicans, Gunnison Island is one of the areas pelicans breed in the United States.
I had never thought of pelicans going that far inland before. That is honestly, that's the most shocking part of all this.
Episode 7, it's about time. There are fossils that were said to be found right here in the Danville area. They even go back in time and encounter some of these fossils, these dinosaurs, firsthand. These dinosaurs include T-Rexes, Triceratops, pterodactyls, turtles, that's not a dinosaur, and Cedarosauruses. All of these existed in or near, in the case of the Triceratops, the Salt Lake area. Now, Phineas claimed they went 300 million years in the past, which would be the Carboniferous period. This just can't be true. These dinosaurs existed all together in the Cretaceous period. Utah was half ocean during that time, so you're getting a lot of that greenery. That's what Utah looked like in the Cretaceous period. Why did Phineas think it was 300 million years ago? Well, it's possible that he put in 300 million years ago, but maybe the time machine only goes back 150 million years or so. Maybe it doesn't go all the way back 300 million years.
They're very good at building stuff, but again, literal time travel, that's a bit of a stretch.
They do a decent amount of travel throughout the show to all sorts of areas in the United States. Let's take a look at the areas they go to and get back from within a day. Episode 1, Mount Rushmore, South Dakota. Season 2, episode 10, Perry almost gets reassigned to the Quad State area. And while we don't know exactly where the Quad State area is, there's a good, strong likelihood it's the Four Corners: Utah, Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico.
I mean, that would make the most sense, Quad State.
Seattle, Washington. Both Perry and the gang go there, presumably both by spaceship/hover car. They go to New Mexico looking for the Chupacabra. Perry and the Alka trainees go to the Grand Canyon in Arizona in 5 hours. Major Monogram and Carl take regular trips to Las Vegas, Nevada. And in the episode where Perry and Doofenshmirtz accidentally get zapped to the desert, they begin walking east back towards Danville. They get to a bus station that says they are headed to Danville and points east, and the bus passes by these giant pink and green dinosaurs, just like the ones in Cabazon, California. And in season 2, episode 37, they fly over the Pacific Ocean and Phineas asks what they think of the Pacific Ocean, implying that they're not normally on the Pacific Ocean.
Okay, honestly, I gotta pause it there, because, I mean, for a lot of these, like, I mean, some of these, yeah, they are traveling using, you know, normal propulsion, like cars and buses and stuff like that. Get there within a day. God, that whole thing of, like, it's a new adventure literally every day. God, that is, like... Oh, God, yeah, I'm starting to feel like it's that whole thing when, like, Alex Bale or anybody else, like, tries to put, like, logic in a show like SpongeBob, except with Phineas and Ferb, you kind of is it harder or easier to get that feeling, because it's already a show with, you know, with realistic logic in some sense, but at the same time, then it goes, like, super far other ways, like... I'm honestly, I'm sorry, my brain is only now just catching up with all the stuff that he's talking about.
And we know from season 4, episode 6, they are not near Niagara Falls. Doofenshmirtz says they're so close to Niagara Falls when they're in Canada, implying that they are not normally close to Niagara Falls. So when we map out all of these locations that they go to, our map looks somewhat like this. Notice a center point around all of those different locations? Now, a weird one is in the very first episode, Doofenshmirtz is pointing his magnet at the tinfoil that he used to cover the eastern seaboard. In real life, if we refer to the eastern seaboard, we are talking about the east coast of the United States. The Atlantic Ocean. But coupled with the fact that they are nowhere near Niagara Falls, it means they're likely not in the northeast. And we also see in season 1, episode 9, they track Doofenshmirtz across the southeast United States, specifically coming from the west, where Utah is. And the fact that Perry needs to use a special jet to get there implies they're also not in the southeast United States.
So, yeah, how would he be able to see, you know, the eastern seaboard, you know, with the whole, you know, with the Earth in the way, you know, because the Earth is round. Because even with light refraction, you know, that only goes so far. I mean, I live, you know, in Toronto, so that's on Lake Ontario. So, and on most cases, you know, the horizon ends, you know, with water when you're down by the lakeshore. But you are able to see, you know, the other side of the lake, either like Buffalo or other places like that, if you're either high enough or, you know, the weather is right enough. So, yeah.
And if he's not talking about eastern seaboard in the sense of the Atlantic Ocean, he might be talking about the eastern seaboard of the ocean they are on, which means we don't have to worry about the eastern seaboard being a point of, There's 2 other shows that take place in this universe, Milo Murphy's Law and Hamster and Gretel. Hamster and Gretel takes place in a different city within...
Wait, Hamster and Gretel takes place in the same universe? I mean, granted, I didn't really hear that much about Hamster and Gretel. Like, actually, how many seasons did it run for? Did it only run for like 1 or 2 or something? Yeah, 2 seasons. I honestly didn't see anything about that show at all. I mean, granted, again, didn't see much of Milo Murphy's Law. I mean, I did see, you know, a couple of episodes and a lot of clips, but I didn't follow either shows as closely as I did Phineas and Ferb.
In the tri-state area. It's never named, at least not yet, although some people theorize that it is East Side, given the fact that the high school in the show is called East Side. Could East Side be the eastern seaboard? East of Danville. But what about episode 1, when the roller coaster flings them from the Statue of Liberty to Mount Rushmore to the Eiffel Tower? Well, this can be explained as well. The Statue of Liberty might not be the Statue of Liberty.
The one in Vegas, really?
The Statue of Liberty that's in Las Vegas, which is significantly closer. Mount Rushmore's probably Mount Rushmore, but that's already semi-close. And the Eiffel Tower that they go to isn't even in France. There's this French flag in the background that is completely backwards, and I haven't seen Anybody point that out? Not to mention, when they get flung off of it into the air, the ground that we see around it is the same ground that we see in season 2, episode 7. This Eiffel Tower's in Danville. Why is it?
Okay, the more I learn about it, the weirder Danville becomes. I mean, granted, you know, it's a fictional city in a cartoon, which, I mean, already sets a certain level, but this is getting absurd.
It in Danville? Because of the French. And we'll get there in the science and history section. Another piece of evidence. In Candace Against the Universe, we see lights over all of these major city areas. And you see this light right here in the smack dab middle of the western area. I thought this might be Denver, Colorado, because in real life, Denver, Colorado has a much higher population than Salt Lake City, Utah, which is going to be our closest real life city to what the tri-state area is in my theory. But when you line up a map of the United States, it is directly on the Great Salt Lake of Utah. Why would that be lit up and Denver, Colorado not be lit up? Unless the tri-state area is the biggest city in that area and thus the one that gets lit up. And if all of that wasn't enough to convince you, in season 4, episode 10, we learn the history of the tri-state area. We learn of the 3 single state areas that join together to become the tri-state area. And when you take a look at the boundary maps of all 3 of these single state areas, and you take a look at the map of the Great Salt Lake and the desert next to it, the entire basin, need I say more? It is a near perfect match.
I mean, I would have liked to have seen those lined up a bit better, because, like, I honestly could believe that it's not. But at the same time, I have no better answer, so I'll just keep going with whatever he's saying.
With what the tri-state area's boundaries are said to be. Am I on to something or am I on something? The world may never know.
You're probably on
but
something.
I think I'm on to something. Am I blurry? I don't think so. I would place Danville right on this bit of land right here. Reason being is it gives us a clearly defined border where this area here could be lowered or this area could be raised to allow for an ocean to come in and out. It lines up really well with the maps of Danville that we do see in the show, such as the laundromat map and the angle that it's at. And if Danville's here, we can place East Side right around here, kind of Grantsville. And it's also entirely possible if the ocean fills up all the way to here, it also fills up through this valley right here. And that east side could just be straight east. Now, of course, there's 2 things, in my opinion, that are the hardest to explain away. The radio station is listed as WJOP. W is used for anything east of the Mississippi River, and K is used for anything west of the Mississippi River. And
why is that? I've never heard of that before. That's weird.
And in Across the Second Dimension, they mention that Danville is in Eastern Standard Time. Each of these would apply east of the Mississippi River, would they not? Well, maybe they don't. Because there may be an explanation that lies within the government and the law and order of the tri-state area.
Okay. Radio station 1, I could possibly believe it being, it's a fictional town. Maybe they got rid of that standard for whatever reason. I don't know why that is. The time zone one, like, that I could only see really happening if, like, for some reason, the United States basically pulled a China and made sure that the entire country is operating in the same time zone for propaganda reasons. And even then, if you were going to do that, why would you choose Eastern Standard Time when you have so much of the country after it? Like, wouldn't you choose something that's more in the middle?
Which of course is section 3, so hold on to your butts. But like I said, none of this explains how the tri-state area is sometimes on the sea and sometimes in the middle of a giant green field. Especially since if the ocean were to just recede, you would expect it to just leave sand and gravel and the bottom of the ocean there. But instead it's all green. Well, that brings me directly into our next section, science and history. In episode 19, they go into the ocean to try to find Biff, Buford's goldfish. And when they reach the ocean floor, it's still pretty damn bright, almost as if the ocean is not that deep. We also see in season 2, episode 23, when Buford looks out over the tri-state area, we don't see any water, and yet Doofenshmirtz flying away flies off over the ocean, implying that the ocean is still semi-nearby, and that it has the ability to sometimes go up and touch the city, and sometimes be farther away from it. So we're looking at a fluctuating ocean level, an ocean that fluctuates by quite a bit, and this doesn't make—
Which, if it did, I very much don't believe you would have so much traffic on it just because of how inconsistent the water levels are.
Sense in the real world, but it might make sense in the world of Phineas and Ferb. You see, Danville has shown itself to be extremely proficient in the realm of science all throughout its history. And on many, many occasions in the modern day of the show, weather modification technology has been utilized. We've also seen on multiple instances the ability to modify large portions of the land, such as Dr. Doofenshmirtz's Sculptinator, having the ability to turn Danville Mountain into a sculpt of himself and then turn it back into a mountain. We also learned apparently the Fireside Girls earned a patch for moving an entire mountain. How is that possible without technology? Or Doofenshmirtz—
I mean, granted, from what we've seen of the Fireside Girls, and from my own experience of being a scout and scout leader, yeah, I believe it possible. Yeah, you know, your good old hands, and get a shovel, maybe a pickaxe if you're feeling lucky.
Doofenshmirtz's mountain out of a molehill. There's a lot of mountain creation here. The point is that climate modification is not only possible, but regularly used with—
I mean, granted, most of that is from Doofenshmirtz. It doesn't seem like anybody else is using that.
in the tri-state area. So is an ocean being artificially filled every once in a while really that much of a stretch? And the science behind it is deeply important to the history of Danville, which is why I combined the science and history sections. Don't question it. Back to my man Wayne Brady, we learned that the 3 single state areas that became the tri-state area were formed by independent thinkers who were largely unaffected by bureaucratic hurdles. Unaffected by bureaucratic hurdles is going to become very important later. Now, he also says that the Capitol building was moved here on the backs of 7 giant sea turtles from Sri Lanka, and that it's formed from mostly adobe and seaweed. We also learn later he's not actually an employee of City Hall, and he actually rips up the historical pamphlets that City Hall themselves are giving out. So the information that he's giving in this scene, we can take it with a grain of salt. Not to mention the fact that we know Danville existed as early as 1805, and yet Sri Lanka wasn't formed until 1948. So it's
I mean, he might be talking, just as a geographic area.
Very unlikely that the sea turtles moved it from Sri Lanka specifically. So of course, if we can't trust the history that this tour guide is giving us, where do we start? Well, why don't we start with the French? There are so many connections in Danville to the French, both physical and cultural. Phineas and Ferb celebrate Bastille Day, a French holiday that recognizes the storming of the Bastille. We also learn that they get presents for Bastille Day. Ferb got a camera and a junior chemistry set. The junior chemistry set, by the way, being extremely advanced, just shows more of Danville's prowess for science. There's also so many mimes in Danville Park. Why is there so many mimes in a park in the United States? We also see notable differences in French history. In the show Les Miserables, they wave this giant red flag. However, in Roller Coaster the Musical, when they are going through a bunch of musical numbers and making references to them, they're instead waving the tricolor French flag, not the red flag. Now, while we can't say exactly why, it does show that there is a notable difference, I think specifically when it comes to French national pride and cultural exports. It could also have been changed because of communism. We'll see later the Cold War is important to this timeline, and the red flag became associated with workers' rights movements and communism, so it's possible that piece of iconic imagery was changed in order to distance the story from communism. And this actually explains too the backwards flag and the Eiffel Tower in Danville that I was talking about earlier. They were probably in town either for some French cultural festival or maybe even Bastille Day.
I mean, for all we know, again, Danville and the Tri-City area is just seemingly so weird. For all we know, who's to say that there isn't such a large French population or French-speaking population in Danville that they just don't have a little France? You know how most cities have like a Chinatown or like a little Italy or something. Sorry, just got chilly all of a sudden.
Even though Bastille Day and May 20th are not really near each other, the Eiffel Tower's mobile here. There's a French traveling troupe that travels around the world being French, and they take with them the Eiffel Tower. In this particular instance, they accidentally hung the flag backwards, a mistake that anybody in France would not have made. We also see in this universe, the Panama Canal was formed by the destruction of the Corn Colossus in the year 1914. Now in real life, the Panama Canal was basically done by 1914. It was dug by the United States between 1904 and 1914, but before that, the United States bought the rights to dig it from, you guessed it,
Panama.
The French. And
Wait,
the French
really?
who had tried to dig the canal in the past just didn't have the public support funding or whatever they needed. They never were able to get the Panama Canal dug. Now, if there's an increased importance on French national pride, it's very possible that in this universe they just refused to sell it to the United States, but everything kind of worked out because the Temple of Wachadoon cracked the country in half. Now, these differences in French history lead me to one very important historical event in the modern United States America empire. Because while we know that Danville existed as early as 1805, we don't know for sure when it was actually founded. However, I do have a strong theory that is related to the United States and their history with the French.
Okay. Going back to what I said earlier in the video about, Hearts of Iron 4 Kaiserreich. If you don't know, Hearts of Iron 4, the World War II, grand strategy game. Kaiserreich is a very popular alternate history mod for the game that basically takes place in an alternate history where what if, Germany won World War I. And one of the big things that caused that, this alternate timeline is the United States never getting involved with, in the war. So, is he going to be talking about however the potential history of this world basically coming from, once again, the United States' involvement that may or may not have actually happened in World War I?
That is the 1803 Louisiana Purchase.
Never mind, I was very wrong.
For those who don't know, the Louisiana Purchase was French bought this territory from Spain, and then the United States bought it from France. However, while the eastern border of this purchase was very well defined, the western border was not. While it was generally understood that the western border was the Rocky Mountains that went through Colorado, they were never actually officially defined until 1819, which by that point, Oregon country had also been claimed, which cuts just north of the Great Salt Lake. So is it really too much of a stretch with all of the existing history differences we already have for the Salt Lake to have been included in any of those treaties? Now, of course, we already see notable differences in the history of France. It's very possible that France was a little bit more powerful in this timeline and were able to colonize a little further westward, or perhaps Danville was even specifically procured for whatever reason by the United States government as a part of these treaties. It included at its western edge the Great Salt Lake, and thus beginning the deep ties between the French and the people of the eventual tri-state area. So let's just say, for the sake of this, Danville was formed in 1803 with the advent of the Louisiana Purchase. And in this new territory, 3 distinct states were formed. Not US states, the 2 that became the bi-state area and the adjacent area. 2 years later, of course, we see their Capitol building is there. This town is just growing. It looks like it has that main street and it's just now becoming a real town. And we don't know exactly when the tri-state area was founded. Based on the outfit that John P. Tri-State is shown to have worn,
Tri-State.
I want to put the foundation of the tri-state area at around the mid-1800s. Now, of course, the Civil War also happened in this timeline.
So yeah, okay, right. So I mean, wait, how? So yeah, this probably would have been in like the area where states weren't allowed to do slavery, right? Is that what was the parallel? What was the God, what was the thing for that? I know there was a line for that. Sorry, I'm rambling here.
Which means slavery was canon to Phineas and Ferb. Now, we do learn on a couple instances about an event known as the Battle of Danville. We don't know for sure, but there's a good likelihood this was the Civil War. Typically, in the history of the American Empire, when we think about the Battle of, it is almost always from the Civil War, because that was the biggest war fought on American soil. And I put war in quotes because obviously the biggest one of the biggest wars with the Native American genocide. And then, of course, we arrive at 1903 with the Danville World Fair. There's robots powered by steam. That's crazy.
Yeah.
We see this area is still relatively barren. We don't see the green grasses like we do in the modern day. We see what appears a lot more as like a desert landscape. We see that both in 1903 and 1805. At this point, the area around Danville is still a desert. And now we get to the mid-1900s and the advent of the Cold War.
Oh, God.
The Cold War, of course, was a period of political rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union primarily, although there is a whole lot of other things that happened in here as well, including the Vietnam War, which we also know is canon. That style of helmet, the camel wrap, added to that style of helmet during the Vietnam War. One of the major factors of this war was control of economic ideology. It's often framed as capitalism versus communism. It was also about scientific advancement. The space race was a huge part of the Cold War. Which country could make the best weapons? Which country could stock the highest nuclear arsenal? Which empire could get to the moon first? Which empire could make the greatest scientific breakthroughs during that time? Now, one of the big reasons we know that the Cold War happened in the Phineas and Ferb timeline is the Nimitz-class aircraft carrier mentioned in Season 4, Episode 7. This was a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier made for the Cold War. Now, an interesting tidbit, we know that bomber planes were most likely manufactured in the tri-state area during the Cold War.
Wait,
do we
really?
know this? In Season 1, Episode 18, these two old ladies were said to be parts of roller derby teams back in 1957, and the tri-state areas is called the Tri-State Bombers. Another real-life sports team called the Bombers is the Baltimore Bombers, and they were specifically named the Baltimore Bombers after the bombers manufactured in that area.
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, I've definitely heard of stuff like that before. I mean, on the other side of Toronto, in Oshawa, there's a huge, one of the bigger, like, General Motors plants, in the country, I think, if I remember correctly. And their local hockey team are literally called the Generals. So yeah, it's been done before.
Logic goes, Tri-State Bombers are named that for the same reason. And it makes sense why bombers would be commissioned by the United States government in the tri-state area. Tri-state area, for years, has already been shown to be one of the highest technologically advanced cities ever. It also lines up with the timing. Bombers in Baltimore were manufactured in 1941 for World War II, and the team was named in 1950. Meanwhile, the Cold War started in 1947, and the roller derby takes place in 1957. 9 to 10 years seems to be kind of the real-life distance that those teams are named.
That makes sense.
It makes sense why it would be named here in the tri-state area as well. Now, this bomber manufacturing here in the tri-state area provided great economic boons to the area. Because we see in 1903, this area is completely barren. However, by 1957, there's a whole city there. They were probably also manufacturing things for World War I and II, but I don't have any evidence of that, so stop asking. These wars brought great economic success to the area of the tri-state area. That brings us to another time in the 1950s, a UFO crashing in Roswell, New Mexico, as noted on the Uncovery channel, that began the great reverse engineering craze. This reverse engineering craze proved to be an extreme scientific boon to the United States. Reverse engineering this alien technology was likely the start of many of the technologies we see in the Phineas and Ferb universe in the modern day. Holograms are commonplace, used by children. Hoverjet insurance exists. Tiny batteries power huge machines. Doofenshmirtz has 2 prosthetic metal arms. We are just now in the modern day getting to prosthetics that are that advanced.
I'd always thought that, Doofenshmirtz was just, Doofenshmirtz. He was, very advanced, because he evil genius. Well, the more I hear, the more I'm... Man, how weird is, the Phineas and Ferb world that I just was never aware of, like, at all.
Even the mall massage chairs have robotic arms used for massaging scalps, molecular transporters, ability to clone vegetables, tools to splice and edit DNA being available in high school classrooms. That's dangerous. See, because of Danville's existing state as a scientific powerhouse, it is extremely likely, in my opinion, that this UFO that crashed in New Mexico was brought up to the tri-state area to be experimented on. And of course, anytime some great, huge new technology comes out that revolutionizes industry, we hit an industrial revolution. And just like the other industrial revolutions before it,
climate change,
we are led to what I like to call the Great Collapse. An extreme amount of climate change that affected the world. We see most of this through the lens of Doofenshmirtz, who recalls stories from his past, and we see visions back to Gimmelstump in the 1960s. Doofenshmirtz is said to be 47, which means that this takes place during 2008. He was born in 1961. By the mid-1960s, Gimmelstump is gloomy and smoggy and deeply, deeply impoverished. And this poverty likely happened extremely recently, because the day of Doofenshmirtz's birth, we see a hospital that is filled with relatively modern medical technology, no evidence of any sort of technological poverty. But by the mid-1960s, despite the fact that the Doofenshmirtzes live in a castle, they are so deeply impoverished that they have to take out a loan to get a lawn gnome, which, by the way, whatever evil fucking capitalist saw the cultural importance of lawn gnomes to the Druselstinian people and then went in and took advantage of the poverty of the nation and offered loans and repossessions on lawn gnomes.
Yeah, that is evil. They should have been the villains of the show.
Shame on you. Gimmelstump has an entire district of abandoned claw machines, evidence of an extreme overproduction, and then a sudden end to the industry. All of them filled with rocks, Doofenshmirtz's allowance being 3 cents a year.
Man, that a 3-cent coin. What? I mean, I know in the UK there was a huge thing where they went to decimal-based coinage from like shillings and all those little in farthings and whoever. 3 cents?
We see a field of abandoned fire hydrants, and we see that Doofenshmirtz's mother sewed all of these dresses thinking that Roger was going to be a girl, but when it turned out to be a boy, they no longer had the money or the material to afford any more clothing materials for Heinz Doofenshmirtz.
And again, that very much seems like a them problem, because like, what? Babies outgrow clothing very quickly. Why would you make so much clothes just after they were born, or just before they were born, I should say?
It's extremely clear that during this time, Druselstein was in a state of deep poverty and great ecological distress. Now, Druselstein is said to be in Eastern Europe. We learn that Druselstein was subject to many foreign occupations. So would it at all be surprising if at some point during the Cold War, Druselstein was occupied by the Soviets? And despite this extreme poverty, there's still a functioning school system, specifically one that rewards science. There's a whole science fair and some sort of funding that allows child Doofenshmirtz, this extremely poor kid, to build his first innator. And he also invents a lifelong lasting spray that he uses on Balloony. And this kid's less than 10, almost as if the science is being subsidized by the Soviet government in an attempt to keep up with the United States.
Man, okay, and now if I remember correctly, wasn't there a whole thing? There was one episode where like, wait, was it? I don't know if I'm getting it mixed up with another show or something, but it was like, all of the industry in the country was like driven off of like, because the country was really long and skinny, all industry was driven off of like a single spinning like shaft that went down the entire country or something, and it was like powered by a goat at either end. God, was that it, or am I misremembering it?
And that paints a really interesting picture, in my opinion. You have the United States that ended up going so far ahead because of this chance landing of a UFO versus the Soviet Union desperately trying to keep up, occupying nations just to fund their science programs. We actually see this worldwide smog lasts all the way up to the 1970s. In 1977, Doofenshmirtz arrives in New York as a 16-year-old man, and New York is also covered in smog. It's gray, it's colorless, it's yucky. And yet, by 1982, when he goes on his date with Lindana and the zenith of the reverse engineering technology craze hits, the world is fine. Something key happened between 1977 and 1982.
What though? Because like, and what technology were they even reverse engineering? Because like they're still using internal combustion engines and stuff like that. So like it couldn't be, oh, they went entirely, clean energy or something.
Nowadays, it doesn't feel like it. Climate change was not always a partisan issue. President Richard Nixon, yes, that Nixon, founded the Environmental Protection Agency. And from 1977 to 1981, the President of the United States was Jimmy Carter. Now, Carter has a big history of climate action, even before he was president when he was governor of Georgia. He also created the Department of Energy in 1977 to bring together all the different energy programs the government was running at the time. One of those could have been an energy project related to some certain alien spaceships that crashed and were brought to the tri-state area. So would it be a surprise at all if Jimmy Carter had the same scientists in the tri-state area who were researching this alien technology start to use that alien technology to affect the climate? We see in episode 24, the alien milkshake bar, which is just on this tiny asteroid, is somehow able to support an atmosphere. It is breathable. It is oxygenated on this tiny asteroid. We also see in episode 23, Mars is fully breathable, and there's aliens on Mars. The aliens have some form of climate modification already developed by the time of this show. And that actually ties us into 3 specific bits of history that we learn in the show. 1, that the Egyptians used to summon aliens using music to help them build the pyramids. 2, the flying fishmonger commissioned a song that was so gloomy it would make it instantly rain every time it was played. And 3, the 1950s reverse engineering craze, where they found an alien spaceship and reverse engineered its technology.
Honestly, I just thought back, the Flying Fishmonger song, I just remembered that episode. And if they had, like, not even technology, just music that was able to do that, like, how many droughts around the world would that have, like, stopped and helped and stuff like that? God, now I'm just trying to remember the song. He's a fishmonger, and he flays.
I'm losing my voice. In the modern day, Drusselstein's skies are perfectly clear, so it's not regional. And just like the emergent technology that we have as a result of the reverse engineering craze, we also have weather technology.
No, get off now!
Grass that grows instantly in the rain, weather pellets, a blueprint for a precipitation machine, rapid leaf production accelerators, instant grass that is usable on the moon as well. And Phineas gets hit with the boring
AstroTurf,
ray, he says, atmospheric pressure seems low, which would suggest cloudy skies. Yet, it's completely sunny, almost as if it's supposed to be cloudy right now, but it's not, because whatever weather modification technology they're using is preventing the clouds from appearing. Seas that are hit with sudden intense storms with no warning. Sudden rain and gloom stopping on a dime. We also see plenty of odd geology, things that are in places they probably shouldn't be. There's a geyser right out front of Mount Rushmore. That's not there in real life. Back to the mountain creation technology. On the border of the United States and Canada, the United States side has this huge cornfield, and the Canada side has endless mountains. I don't know if you know this, United States and Canada are connected. The terrain of Canada flows into the United States and vice versa. For this to be the case, where there's a big flat cornfield on one side and huge mountains on the other, one of those two sides needed to use geology modification to either make it flat or make it mountainous.
I mean, knowing the Canadian government and knowing America's insatiable thirst and hunger for corn, I'm going to guess it was America that did the modifications.
in Danville ideal nature preserves for many non-native animals. Animals that would be very unhappy if these nature preserves weren't made perfectly for their species. Danville has swamps. Swamps in the desert. And of course, an ocean that is sometimes directly on the shores of Danville and sometimes completely absent and receded. And when that ocean goes away, it leaves instantly grown grass in its place. Now, of course, if we solved climate change in this universe, where does that leave climate action in the modern day? Well, honestly, in Danville, there's not a whole lot of climate action. We see that the tri-state area has an extremely fast fashion type of culture. Fashion, I don't know if you know this, one of the biggest contributors of climate change in the real world. We see this in the runway episode. We see this with the aglet episode. We see this with Doofenshmirtz's ball gowninator, meaning that there's technology that can just instantly fabricate clothes.
Though again, that seems like a very much like a Doofenshmirtz exclusive type of technology.
The bed of 1,000 coats. Medical waste is disposed of in normal garbage dumps. All of these would wreak havoc on the environment if this was the day-to-day life in any real world. However, if they don't have to worry much about climate change, they can fabricate whatever the hell they want. We do see that just outside of Danville, there is wind energy right outside the suburbs. And yet, Alka doesn't normally use green energy, unless wind energy is not considered green in this universe. And Danville has a clean water flush-off, which sends 1 million gallons of water straight into the ocean. There is no sense of water conservation.
Okay, you know, on the one hand, you know, you always think it's like, high-tech technology, giving it to the past, you know, that'll do a lot of good. At the same time, the more I hear, the less I want to live in the Phineas and Ferb world, just for how oddly wasteful it is. It's like absurdly so.
When Doofenshmirtz invents the carbon footprintinator, he says people are always talking about their carbon footprint, but I don't know what that is. And yet he understands the anti-environmentalist themes of what he is doing. So he clearly has an understanding for what environmentalism is, and yet doesn't know what a carbon footprint is? Well, little piece of real life history. The carbon footprint, while it did exist pre-2003, the way we understand individual carbon footprints actually comes from a BP oil campaign in an attempt to push the responsibility of climate action onto the individual consumer rather than them, the oil company, who is one of the biggest contributors to climate change in the world, pushing it onto the individual person to make the decision to be green rather than having anybody regulate the companies that are actually causing this mass damage. Should you maybe not be buying things that cause a bunch of plastic waste? Sure, but maybe the companies shouldn't be producing all the plastic waste in the first place. And of course, we have evidence of the Great Collapse from so many years ago. Sunglasses are called smog blockers. There's a field of abandoned coffee mugs in Seattle like they were just dumped in the middle of the city. The Cabazon dinosaurs are there, but none of the city surrounding it is there. However, we do see a giant garbage dump in the middle of the desert with nothing around it. And just like we regulated in 1978, spray cans no longer have any chlorofluorocarbons that were at one point destroying the ozone, but now, because we banned them, the ozone's healing. If you need a little good news today, it worked.
That I actually did know. If only we could do more good stuff like that.
Regulating chlorofluorocarbons worked, guys. We can make change in the real world. There are other bits of history that I didn't get to, so I'm gonna take a quick break just to go through those. Season 3, Episode 5, there are tons of ancient war helmets and weapons buried in the tri-state area from different cultures all over the world, and there's a ton of them. Is that more evidence of time travel? Perhaps the Battle of Danville was actually like an ancient Greek war. And all the animals are shown to have complex thoughts and understand human speech. Interesting. Perry is literate. And of course, how could we talk about the Cold War without mentioning the space race? With the advent of alien technology, the space race probably went a lot faster. There's evidence we went to the moon multiple times. Ferb grabbed an American flag from the moon earlier in the show, and yet when we go back for their moon skyscraper, there's another flag there. And of course, in the Queen of Mars episode, the guy watching the rover when Candace is trying to get his attention has a breakdown and says he's been doing nothing but staring at red rocks for 20 years. That places the first Mars rover landing at around 1988 at the latest. In real life, we didn't have a rover touchdown on Mars until 1997. That's a full 9 years earlier.
God, it's like, I'm listening to this, and all I can think of is just all of the butterfly effects. Just all of the butterfly effects. Just of the little things to get growing bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, seemingly regular civilization hasn't really changed at all.
Minimum. In season 4, episode 1, somebody says that the space shuttle program ended years ago. If the show takes place in 2008, it wouldn't have ended yet. That season came out in 2012, and in real life, the shuttle program had only been done for 1 year. He specifies multiple years, almost as if the shuttle program ended a lot earlier because it started a lot earlier. And lastly, Danville has an optional moat. Just in case that weather technology gets out of hand, you gotta have somewhere for the water to go so that the city doesn't get flooded. Why else would you have an optional moat? We now move on to the government law and order section of this video, where we learn—
Right, I completely forgot. This entire time, we were just on the one section. God, that was long. How much more of the video do we have?
that Danville's government is completely unchecked by United States federal law. Back to my original purpose. Why are there no American flags on any government buildings up until near the end of season 2? Not only that, but why can federal law be violated by both the government of the tri-state area and the people on a regular basis?
What are you talking about?
FAA and ATC regulations do not apply here. Phineas and Ferb regularly build shit right by the international airport.
Definitely big.
There are no OSHA protections for workers. Workers are regularly endangered in Danville. Federal minimum wage does not apply. Candace is making $3.50 an hour. Minimum wage has not been that low since 1989. There are no monopoly laws. Phineas and Ferb open these lemonade stands all over town within a single day with no competition at all, and it seems like there are very few child protection laws at all.
I mean, granted, that I could potentially see it being more a case of the fact that, you know, since Phineas and Ferb usually have these things go up and come down within a day, it could be the fact that they rise up and fall down too quick for the federal government to even register, because that is one of the things about federal government, is that it's supposed to be slow so that it can like think on things. So if you have like a monopoly rise up and then collapse within a span of a day, was it really a monopoly? Not even in a day, within like less than 12 hours, since they have to wait, since, you know, they go to bed first.
In show business and just the regular workplace. We do also see that the Federal National Park Service may be significantly weakened in this universe. We see a coffee shop in the Grand Canyon, and Phineas and Ferb are modifying Mount Rushmore, and nobody seems to really mind. And outside of that, there are so many violations of federal law that I have to read them and put them in this montage. Children can sign permits and contracts. No child protection laws in show. Phineas and Ferb open a restaurant with no Phineas and Ferb are too young to start a car, Phineas but not too young to operate an airplane. Disobedient workers, toy factories, We know that the tri-state area structures itself as a democracy, with the people electing a mayor as the head of the executive branch of the state, and while all three branches of government are present, executive, legislative, and judicial, they are not all equal. Every branch is subservient to the executive branch, which has full undisputed power to do whatever it wants. We see that the mayor of Danville can legally make someone else mayor. He does it twice, once with Doofenshmirtz to avoid bad PR, and the other one with Candace in Mayor for a Day. And when Candace is the mayor, she's signing bills like there's no tomorrow. She creates a mounted police force on nothing but unicorns. She mints a new currency. She enforces a hairstyle on the citizens of Danville. She weaponizes and commands the SWAT SWAT team as if she has commander-in-chief status in the city itself, and every bill that she wrote and signed instantly became law. The legislature of Danville did not need to write these laws. She can write them herself.
Okay, so what you're telling me is that the more I hear about it, what you're telling me is that Danville and the tri-state area isn't so much an area within the United States as it is so much as it actually being like a fully independent city-state or vassal state or something of the US. I don't know.
We also see in season 3, episode 24, Roger can just suspend democracy and make Doofenshmirtz the supreme leader.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
There are absolutely no checks and balances on mayoral power in Danville or the tri-state area at large. And you gotta ask yourself, why? If the United States government still exists, clearly these states have not become independent nations that can do whatever they want. They would still be beholden to federal law. And then we get to the episode where they go to Monteviabad for the Grand Prix. Monteviabad is clearly a parody of Monaco and Monte Carlo. Monaco, though, exists as a city-state. France tried to annex it, but then they eventually allowed them to maintain their sovereignty. But all it is, it's a country that's just the size of a city. Now, this got me thinking. The tri-state area is not fully a city-state. It is still a part of the United States.
It's like a vassal or something.
However, it could exist as an autonomous city. While still being a part of the United States itself, it is a city that is allowed to govern itself. This would explain why there are so many violations of federal law, but would still legally make it a part of the United States government. Now, this explains our earlier point that I mentioned about WJOP and the Eastern Time Zone. If the tri-state area is an autonomous zone with full executive authority, what would stop them from using whatever time zone or radio codes they want? I believe.
Why would you use Eastern Standard Time, though? That is like so far away.
That the mayor of season 1, he wanted to lead the tri-state area how he wanted to lead it and not worry too much about the patriotism of America itself. Roger, on the other hand, in his first mayoral speech, has this giant American flag behind him and is building a new government building outside the city. He just became mayor. Now, when we take a look at existing governmental agencies within the tri-state area, a couple of things come up. We know that the IRS exists, tax is being paid, but more specifically, Doofenshmirtz has a sign that says 401k. 401k is a part of United States tax code, part of the IRS, meaning the IRS has some jurisdiction here. 2, episode 13, Candace is trying to get her permit. There is likely a Department of Licensing. Typically, departments of licensing are handled by state, I think, but there is a Danville Department of Licensing. National parks are typically approved by United States Congress. Because Danville has a national park, it is likely that they have some connection to the United States Congress. On the city side, when Alka comes in to assess the property damage done by Perry's battle, they disguise themselves as Danville Water and Power and say that they are with the city. Most likely, Water and Power is handled by the city. We also see season 4, episode 19, the Halloween episode, when Doofenshmirtz gets his castle, a whole host of different departments and authorities come out to assess the situation. Danville's Water Management Department. There's the Bureau of Castle Conservation. There's the Castle Relocation Authority. Why is there so many castle-based authorities here in Danville? There's the Ways and Means Committee, which is a tax writing organization in the House of Representatives, federal government. And then there's also the Means and Ways Committee, which is not a thing in real life, but maybe that's the local equivalent. And last but not least,
they make their own equivalent and just swap the name around. God, there has to be some people, like some pencil pushers in the there has to be some bureaucratic pencil pushers that are angry for just making paperwork that much more difficult.
We have the Department of Bureaucracy. The Department of Bureaucracy sounds like a little bit of a joke. It's like, oh, this is just a department that is a department. But I think the Department of Bureaucracy makes sense as a department when you consider that the founding members of the tri-state area were independent thinkers free from bureaucratic hurdles. If the United States government, for whatever reason, has allowed the tri-state area to maintain that existence of being free from bureaucratic hurdles, it would make sense that as at least some form of check on power, the Department of Bureaucracy is formed to try to slow down a mayor's immediate descent into supreme leader status. Now, if I had to guess why the United States would allow the tri-state area to remain autonomous, my best guess would have to do with its contributions to science. It's very possible that some of the scientific methods that they are using to solve climate change at the incredibly rapid destructive pace it was going, or to win the Cold War by developing new weapons and technology, there's a very good chance that some of the methods they used to do that may have been a little less than savory, maybe a little less than legal. So it's very possible that in a state of emergency during the Cold War, the United States singularly granted autonomous status to the tri-state area so they could continue making scientific progress while not technically breaking federal law. That's the best explanation I can think of for how it can be existing in the United States and constantly be breaking federal law.
Again, the more I hear, the more I think I don't want to live in that world. I'm quite happy. I know a lot of bad stuff is happening in this realm, but I don't want to go there.
And I think it at least makes some modicum of sense. Now, we know there
A
are
little bit,
laws here in the tri-state area. It's not just a complete lawless wasteland. Some of the laws that we hear mentioned throughout the show, season 2, episode 7, the mods that they make to Meep's ship are considered not street legal, meaning there is legal limits on vehicles. Season 2, episode 8, they take down their backyard fortress due to pesky zoning laws. Season 2, episode 17, Perry's evil clone knocks over a completely full garbage bin that has a big "Don't Litter" sign on it. He steals money from an armored truck and goes on a big old police chase. We see Doofenshmirtz gets a parking ticket for parking his Inator in a loading zone. When they build their skyscraper to the moon, the song lyrics say that their skyscraper is all up to code with permits in order. Clearly not US code, but perhaps a local code. And
but the fact that you're even allowed to even try to do that, like building a skyscraper all the way to the moon, like, wait, how far away is the moon to Earth again? Yeah, so 384,000 kilometers. So wait a second, let's do a little conversion here. Okay, so I'm just going to, so we'll say, God, okay, never mind. Okay, so how many meters is a story? Is like a building story? Because I know it's like rough, it's like 10 feet around. So what's it in meters? 3.3 meters. So if we pull out the calculator and we pull out, and we put that and divide it by 3.3, that is, so their moon skyscraper ends up being 116,484,848.5 stories tall. I mean, we'll say this half bit right here was the bit, like, that was the space between the roof and the moon itself. But man, that's a tall building.
of course, season 2, episode 23, a police officer stops Doofenshmirtz without probable cause and asks him if he has a license to drive a robot with that many axles. Now, in real life, it is illegal to pull over someone without probable cause. Of course, it happens all the time, but I figured I'd mention it here.
Yeah.
Local adoption laws mean Doofenshmirtz is legally an ocelot. There's an ordinance against either erasing messages from someone else's phone or waving giant magnets over their house. And we see that in the bad future, when Candace goes back and busts the boys, creativity is outlawed. And while creativity isn't outlawed in our actual modern timeline, the possibility is there. As long as the executive branch passes a law, whatever that law is,
they can just
needs
do
to
it.
be followed. As a matter of fact, with all of the different white signs with big red letters saying what to do and not to do, it almost seems as if every private property gets to enforce their own laws. And those laws are determined by white signs with red letters. And if you break any of those laws, that's illegal. But if you did it somewhere that law doesn't exist, not illegal.
It's a metal sign with big red letters on it, and that makes it legally binding.
But the question remains, who is enforcing this law? Well, that would be the police, of course. The police are recognizable by their blue outfits and shoulder patches. Every police officer has one of those red shoulder patches that is either in the shape of a circle, a shield, or a triangle. At first, I thought it was going to be jurisdiction, but then when we see they arrest this lady for fraud, there's a shield and a circle coming out of there. So my best estimation is that it signifies rank. Now, an important question to ask when analyzing the law structure of this city is whether the police force is government-owned or is it a private security company. With what little information we do have to work off of, it's hard to say for certain. However, we do see the police acting largely in the interest of private property. Not so different from real life, but there are some key distinctions. Of course, they're chasing evil clone Perry for stealing money from an armored truck. The police have an instant response to a store robbery. They're also seen working security at the Googleplex Mall, arresting the old lady for committing fraud, and showing up anytime a private citizen calls them. Now, here's where we don't see them. While we see an officer on the street here, he shows no urgency in doing anything about the stampede that is now coming through the city. He just looks confused.
I mean, granted, if I was just, standing, on patrol and I just saw a bunch of cows come out of the subway, I'd be rather confused too.
Don't see them enforcing any sort of road law despite clear violations of traffic laws, running lights, speeding. When the power goes out and the traffic lights are down, it is complete chaos at major intersections, and there is no officers there directing traffic like you might expect in real life. Now, we do see one more variant of police officer, and that's the one with the white outline. We see them twice throughout the show. We see them in court, and we see them at the 24-hour music festival at an event that Roger is attending and hosting at. The only time we see these white outline police officers is in government settings. Now, this starts to drift over into our infrastructure chapter, but a thing that I find really interesting is that bus drivers have the same style of patch on their shoulders,
but
as do corporate security guards outside of the city and the paramedics. Now, we know that healthcare in the tri-state area is privatized. It is not universal, which is something we will learn a little bit more about in the infrastructure chapter. And
yeah, because good old America never, profit before health, I guess.
We know that the buses are run through a company, and we know this because when Perry tries to get on the bus, he is rejected because of company policy. However, the Danville Fire Department does not have these shoulder patches. They are also specifically labeled as Danville Fire Department, whereas the police officers don't have any sort of insignia clarifying Danville. Now, given that the fire department does not have those shoulder patches, yet two private companies do, and given the fact that government-associated police have that special white band around their symbol, it is my belief that the fire department is a state-run service, whereas the police is a private service alongside the paramedics and the bus drivers.
Oh God, okay. Again, it's just more. So I'm just trying to think of the reasoning for that, because again, the more I hear, the again, just more and more reasons to never want to go to this universe. But privatized police, God, that's some cyberpunk. I mean, granted, it's I'd imagine it's very much a Danville exclusive thing, or a tri-state area specific thing, I should say. But privatized police, oh, that's not good at all. I know my dad was a firefighter, and that was one of the things he talked about from time to time, was the fact that out of all the government services, at least up here in Canada, the whole thing the paramedics, police, firefighters, the police were the only ones of the three that pulled in money, because paramedics, that's part of the health service, and firefighters, their own thing, but the police are the only ones that pull in money themselves through parking tickets and stuff like that. So the fact that you'd have them be privatized, huh.
Now, that doesn't mean that the government doesn't pay these services, but that does mean that they are run from a private company. And they can be hired out to act as security, like we see in the malls and the super duper mega superstore. Because of this, I might go as far as to speculate that the Danville City Charter explicitly prevents state-run police from existing. Because despite us seeing security at the courthouse and escorting the mayor at a public event, we never actually see any police or any security at City Hall. This, in my humble opinion, is the only thing acting as checks and balances on mayoral power. The fact that the people
so mob rule. Okay, that's a certainly interesting way of doing things. The only things keeping, the government in control is the fact, is an angry mob.
People of Danville can walk into City Hall at any time and remove the mayor might be the only thing preventing that complete unchecked power from getting out of control. And as a matter of fact, we actually see the people of Danville try to storm City Hall, and Roger is only saved by Perry the Platypus swooping him up to the roof. And the real question in that scenario is Perry the Platypus breaking the law by saving Roger from the angry mob? Who knows? As far as the judicial
That is certainly a question right there. Wow, okay.
branch is concerned, we know that citizens can be summoned for jury duty. And interestingly enough, in regards to punishment, we know there is a tri-state penitentiary, but we also know because of the ALCA work release program, Doofenshmirtz is allowed to teach high school as community service rather than go to prison. We also see another judge's ruling that means he has to do this seminar. Now, I'm in favor of rehabilitation over punishment when it comes to the law, but with the things Doofenshmirtz has done. You see, a YouTuber by the name of Mouse8, M-O-U-S-A-I-T, listed out Doofenshmirtz's crimes and how they would be punished under United States law. They determined that his total sentence would be 3 death sentences, 11 life sentences, 684 additional years in prison, and a $123 billion fine. Does teaching high school as community service equate to that level of punishment?
I mean, if it does, that only points towards the fact that tri-state area teachers are paid much better than, the teachers in the vast majority of America.
No, he's evil, but he's also owns a building. And if he owns a building, he gets to determine what's illegal in that building. It all makes sense. If every private property owner is allowed to determine what is and what isn't the law for their individual private properties in the terms of white signs with red letters, Doofenshmirtz isn't actually breaking any laws. He's probably just going to court for stealing. Everything else he does is probably completely legal under the laws of the tri-state area. But outside of that, it seems like the United States Constitution is still in effect. People seem to have full freedom of speech, press and assembly, and the rights to protest, which, might I add, start to get more frequent under Roger Doofenshmirtz's leadership, including the few instances in which the people of Danville try to remove him from office forcibly. Jenny, during season 2, attends a Save the Pigeons protest. Roger is doing something to the pigeons. We already know that he removes the ability for dogs to enter City Hall, despite the fact that City Hall has a dog door. He's likely the one who made it so that dogs can't enter City Hall. You know what? I'm adding a 6th section to this video. We're gonna talk about Roger Doofenshmirtz at the end of this video because I got a bone to pick with that guy.
Geez, okay, honestly, again, the more I'm hearing, the more I'm wondering, was Hines the evil one or is Roger the evil one all along?
But we also see that Roger is likely the only valid leader of the tri-state area. When Doofenshmirtz takes over, he gathers the leaders of the tri-state area, and that's Roger the mayor, a crossing guard, and his building super. We do also see in the running of chinchillas, Candace runs from Danville to Badgertown. Badgertown, most likely another city within the tri-state area. Badgertown does not seem to have their own mayor, because when Candace gets there, Roger's up on stage, despite the fact that Badgertown has its own city hall that we see in the background. Is Roger the mayor of all the towns in the city hall? We do also see City Hall is referred to as a Capitol building on a couple of occasions. Capitol building, that's different from City Hall. The tri-state area existing as an autonomous city, essentially being its own state, means that it has to have some sort of governing body over it, some sort of capital. Roger has sole authority over the tri-state area, which is even more horrifying when you consider the multiple cities that are now under his executive mayoral control. We also see, as a final note here in the government and law section, Doofenshmirtz can invent a new government position in the tri-governor, and as long as he gets votes from the people, it becomes a legal government position. The government of Danville is just in shambles.
I guess I can see the logic being if you have this area that is so volatile and free of rules in some cases, like if you're continuing off the whole thing where it was a hotbed for scientific innovation, I guess you could see it's the whole thing of Rapture from BioShock, where it's oh, you remove the rules and you leave the great minds unfettered and stuff like that. But at the same time, every single thing that I'm seeing that makes Danville and the tri-state area different from the rest of the country is just pointing towards the fact that it just makes it worse.
There is no checks and balances, not even from the people themselves. But I digress. And speaking of Roger Doofenshmirtz, now that we are in the infrastructure and economy sections of this video, I'm going to be splitting them up into 3 distinct parts. We're going to start with an overall of the infrastructure and social welfare and economy and prosperity, but then we are going to move into 2 distinct periods. Season 1, pre-Roger, and Season 2, post-Roger, because there is a clear and distinct difference in the economy and a clear and distinct difference in the infrastructure of the city after Roger becomes mayor than before he becomes mayor. So overall, the infrastructure and social welfare of the tri-state area is as follows. Healthcare is available and uses a credit system. We know that healthcare, as well as daycare and maternity leave, are tied to employment. Maternity leave and daycare and healthcare are not guaranteed by the government. Education is available. Pretty much everyone goes to school, and that would make sense for a community that seems to be incredibly science focused. They would want people to be as educated as possible. Maybe not in the realm of history, as we see history is regularly modified, but in the realm of science, people are incredibly smart. Linda, Phineas and Ferb's mom, has a secret background in astrophysics. The tri-state area and Danville have...
And wait, what is her job? I was going to say she's a stay-at-home mom, but I don't think she is she? Actually, what did Phineas and Ferb's dad do? Now I'm curious. I gotta look this up. Antique dealer? Really? Okay. And what does their father? Oh no, they're both. Okay, so they're antique dealers. Okay, I didn't know that.
2 universities, Tri-State State and Danville University. Education is clearly very important. Quality of life seems decent, and social inequality seems low, at least at the beginning of the show. Like mentioned before, there is a state-run fire department. There is also a local postal service that, to my knowledge, is not the United States Postal Service, although it might be a kind of a dual system. All of the mail trucks here in Danville are not branded with the USPS logo. In fact, they have their own logo, which I will throw up a recreation of on screen now. I designed this after seeing the patch from multiple angles that is on their shoulder. Additionally, we do see that mailing laws are different. When Perry ships himself as a package, the package only has 2 stamps. Platypuses are typically 2.5 to 5 pounds. Perry probably on the high end because he's ripped. He would need more than 2 stamps. There is garbage and recycling. The trucks are unbranded, which would suggest state run. However, we cannot be sure. And of course, there is a public library, the Danville Museum, the Danville Natural History Museum, and many public parks. Like mentioned earlier, through the mention of Danville Water and Power is likely run by the state. The entirety of Danville seems to be on a single power grid because every time it blows, the entire city loses power. We do see a shot of the power company right here, and interestingly enough, are those Doofenshmirtz brand power coils? They seem to host the same color scheme that all of Doofenshmirtz's tech does. It's very possible he designed power coils that were then used by the power company. Whether somebody else rebuilt them from Doofenshmirtz's blueprints, or Doofenshmirtz made them for the power company, or he sold them to the power company, remains unseen. Regardless,
I mean, I don't know, because it is pointed out that, all of the money that, Doofenshmirtz, Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated, the company doesn't make anything. The entire operating budget for that company is from his wife's, from his alimony from his divorce. Which, again, what does his ex-wife do? I'll look it up later. I need to finish this. It's 6:30 at night.
We do also see that Danville sports 2 dams. We have a power company, we have wind energy. It would make sense if the dams were also hosting
hydroelectric.
However, they don't seem to be flowing out into any rivers, so they might just act as a giant water reservoir. Danville has a sewer system that connects directly to the sea, and water seems to be stored in water towers and reservoirs. People pay for water, they do mention their water bills, and Danville has an optional moat in case of flooding, as we see used when the dam breaks. Likely, that might be because if the weather tech is refilling the ocean, if they accidentally fill it a little bit too high, you have an optional moat to prevent the city from going under. We do know there's existing plumbing structure. A question that I have is, in the lemonade episode, they are pumping lemonade all over the city from the single lemonade maker machine. Are they using existing pipes for that? Or are they laying new pipes to pump the lemonade around? And if they're laying new pipes, do they have the authority to do that?
I mean, again, it's Phineas and Ferb. I'm pretty certain that they were able to do something with the paperwork and somehow also do it in like the span of a single day.
Like I said, nobody's enforcing road law, so I don't see why not. And for our final bit of overall infrastructure, Danville has a SkyTrain, they have a subway system, and a rail system that goes around the city of Danville, meaning there seems to be relatively robust train infrastructure as well. Now,
unlike the rest of America, which which is a point for the I want to live here category.
as far as the economy is concerned, I only have a couple of things overall because the economy is so directly impacted by the election of Roger. We do see a heavy amount of over-consumerism in the terms of fashion and restaurants, which means for the most part, the people likely have a decent amount of money, at least enough to be comfortable and have disposable income. Phineas and Ferb import marble for one of their buildings, which means there is the ability to import into the city of Danville. We also know there's a handful of unions, such as dancers, evil, and hospital workers are all unionized. And Doofenshmirtz has a credit score, which means they do use credit systems. Oh, you just see my legs. Now we are going to discuss the differences between the first mayor's rule, who as far as I know, we don't know his name, and Roger's. The differences in the infrastructure of the city and the economic state of it when Roger becomes mayor. In season 1, we do see that the trash and recycling services run relatively frequently. When Doofenshmirtz moves into the suburb, he has a neighbor who puts out these yellow trash bins on the side of the road. Now, quick important note about yellow trash bins. It's very difficult to find exactly what cities in the United States in real life use what color trash bins without individually looking up each city. However, I did see there was one city that does use yellow trash bins. It is a city in Utah that uses yellow for their yard waste. We do see that this particular neighbor does a lot of yard work.
So they have bins specifically for yard waste? I mean, like, how often are you picking up yard waste? Because, like, again, for us, that's very much like a spring and fall sort of deal, you know, and you just use the brown paper bag, the big brown paper yard waste bags, and you put it out with the garbage. Like, how often are you putting out yard waste that you need a dedicated bin for that?
So those bins being yellow would make sense in my mind to be yard waste here in the city of Danville if Danville's in Utah. And we also know that the government offers grants. SIMP, squirrels in my pants. But most importantly to me is Danville's robust public transportation. Like I mentioned, there's a subway and a train system in Danville, and we see it very frequently throughout season 1. Subways running constantly, cows can get on the subway if they so damn well please. People in the city are often walking around the city. The city seems very walkable, and like it has a robust public transportation system that supports the living of the people in that city. And while there are very little road safety standards, like we see these weird bits where there's a traffic light and a stop sign in weird places on this intersection, very lax road infrastructure, a single traffic light for a 4-way stop, it doesn't seem to matter as much because nobody's driving. Nobody needs to drive because public transportation is so readily accessible that people aren't needing to use their cars, and the traffic is extremely limited. Now, on the economic and prosperity side of season 1, we know that property is cheap. Doofenshmirtz is able to afford a house in the suburbs despite explicitly not being a millionaire. There's the Slushy Burger Worker Exchange Program, where Slushy Burger is seemingly paying to send these workers to different states so that they can experience work in a new location. We see that the harbor is regularly exporting things. Again, no international shipping flags, but the harbor is exporting, meaning money is coming into Danville. Fast fashion is, of course, an extreme moneymaker here in Danville, and we see a lot of people spending a lot of money in season 1, meaning the people are very wealthy. And the only place that we seem to be seeing any sort of budgetary restrictions is at Alka, who we know is already experiencing budget cuts near the end of season 1.
Again, are they a government organization, or are they completely like private? How does that work?
And now comes Roger. Roger is elected mayor at the end of season 1, and through seasons 2 through 4, the infrastructure and social welfare, as well as the economy, flips. Starting in season 2, we see traffic start to build up in the streets of Danville, and we start to see that the public transport is rarely ever used from that point on. Stuff like this happens in real life America too, when the politicians are selling out to auto companies who are paying them to make certain legislations. Roger is selling out Danville to the auto companies, and while we see that the subway still exists, when we see it again in season 3, there's significantly fewer people at the platform. What likely is happening is public transport was free in season 1, and in seasons 2 through 4, it now costs money to use public transportation. And for further evidence here, Phineas and Ferb's parents now have 2 cars. It is becoming increasingly hard to use public transportation here in Danville, and people are having to rely on their cars more and more and more.
Quick correction, we actually do see Lawrence has his car in season 1 in Dude, We're Getting the Band Back Together, but he is never seen driving it until season 2, where he starts to drive it regularly.
Outside of public transportation, we
God, so Roger was actually the evil one. Of course. Of course. He was the handsome one, so he had the easy life. So that's how he turned evil and narcissistic. Okay.
We now see the once clean city is now littered with overfilled trash cans. Most likely due to budget cuts, the trash is no longer being picked up. The city's using a giant bathtub as a water reservoir. That's just silly. In season 2, episode 9, the fire department that Doofenshmirtz calls comes up and tells him not to make a mountain out of a molehill, despite the fact that there is a fire burning behind him. What's most likely happening here is that the fire department's budget has also been slashed, and due to that, they are having to be extremely selective with which fires they take. And if this fire is not big enough to warrant the fire department's time, what kind of serious budget cuts have been made to the fire department? In the Christmas episodes, we see that the city and suburbs are not plowed at all. Snowplows usually go out around 4 a.m. in the real world in heavily populated areas, but by this time the sun's already rising, and when we do eventually see snowplows, we see 2 different types of snowplows, which most likely infers that these are private citizens or private companies coming out to do this because they have to. And the city is not itself funding any kind of snow plowing infrastructure.
God, what? So Roger. God, what did I say before about, like, you know, the cyberpunk and stuff like that? Like, Roger just. God, maybe. Ooh. Maybe it would have been a good idea for, you know, Doofenshmirtz to actually get in control, or at least to get his brother out of politics.
And in that same vein, the roads are incredibly icy when it gets cold, and there's no de-icing at all. Now in season 3, episode 4, Dr. Doofenshmirtz claims, under Roger, public transportation has become clean and efficient, and that urban blight has been solved. Public transportation is a lot easier to keep clean and efficient when nobody's riding it anymore, of course, but we also see no evidence that the urban blight has been solved. In fact, moving over to economy and prosperity, lemonade franchises being able to open all across town in a single day inherently implies that there is a ton of open building space all of a sudden littering Danville. There's a bunch of places that they are able to buy and open their lemonade stands in because businesses are closing and people are having to move out of their homes. Starting in season 2, we get regular food shortages, which of course happens under ineffective governments who are not properly planning for these things. We have a Danville healthy food shortage. We have an egg shortage. We have a peach shortage. And we have a cupcake shortage. Now, while the majority of these things are in part caused by Heinz Doofenshmirtz's antics, the fact that the city doesn't have enough of a built infrastructure behind it to keep up with demand is a problem. And a quick
all because of Roger. Okay.
correction here, there also was a steak shortage in season 1, so this infrastructural issue could have already existed. But the fact that we knew it existed and Roger didn't correct it when he came into office is still part of the issue. But I can't knock his administration fully for that. We also see a sudden increase in charity work, starting in season 2. Jeremy invites Candace and Stacy to help build houses for the less fortunate, meaning there are now people who are less fortunate. And that goes right along with people losing their businesses and houses in the main city. Jeremy also begins offering music lessons as a second job. Him needing to get a second job is enough of a recession indicator in and of itself. Doof mentions economic downturn at multiple points, and he mentions that he's now holding a $300,000 house in a $10,000 neighborhood. Were the houses previously $10,000? What caused the houses to skyrocket up to $300,000? Doofenshmirtz also begins to miss mortgage payments, which he never had problems with before. We also start to see laundry lines hanging over the city. Are people not able to afford their power bills anymore? Are people not able to afford dryers? We know that Danville has 5 laundromats. Are people not able to afford the laundromats anymore?
God, just in the span of like a single mayor, and supposedly still, happening within, a single year, because I'm not buying that whole thing of it not being over a couple of summers. In the span of like a single summer, oh God, like that's like taking like everything and just like taking a sledgehammer to it. The fact that, like, the election of a single public official would have caused things to go that bad so quickly. Jeez.
And in season 3, episode 22, we see somebody robbing a store. Poverty is increasing. Doofenshmirtz is nearing potential poverty as well. We know of a circus that went belly up because of the economy. And if that wasn't enough, season 3, episode 18, we get our first evidence of homelessness in Danville. Now, despite what some people would have you believe, homelessness is not a moral failing. Homelessness is a symptom of a greater problem. Sure, we can try to address homelessness through things like shelters, but until we solve the deep-rooted economic problems, homelessness is not going away, because homelessness is a symptom, not a problem itself. Under Roger, inflation is rising, and poverty is increasing. While I didn't have time to watch Milo Murphy's Law or Hamster and Gretel, we know Milo Murphy's Law takes place in Danville years after Phineas and Ferb, so I did watch the first episode, and what do we see in that first episode? Roger is no longer mayor, they are rebuilding public transportation, the city is clean once again, and the effects of the Roger Doofenshmirtz administration seem to be cleared away. And that brings me to section 6.
Oh, we're going Roger.
Roger Doofenshmirtz. You see, ever since Roger was elected mayor, his primary motivation has always been keeping up appearances. When he makes Dr. Doofenshmirtz the mayor, he does so because the city is mad at him, and he thinks they're going to blame him, so if he makes Dr. Doofenshmirtz mayor, they're gonna blame somebody else instead. It's all about optics. Less than a year into his term as mayor, he unveils a giant statue of himself on Mayor Day, out front of a building that is being built outside of the city. For what? What is the purpose of this building? In season 2, episode 27, the legislature had presented him with a defense bill. First of all, the mayor can sign a defense bill in this world.
I mean, again, like, given how much power this version of a mayor can in the tri-state area, I mean, I'd almost imagine that might have to do something with the privatized police or something like that.
But that makes sense if it's an independent state. But he didn't sign it. Instead, he's using it as a coaster. He is neglecting his duties as mayor. Season 3, episode 4, we learn that there is a 12-part Roger Doofenshmirtz propaganda miniseries that is running all day long. By season 3, episode 18, he is getting a second Mayor of the Year award despite only being mayor for 1 year. Who presents that award? He's buddy-buddy with now known evil venture capitalist Middington Random. He has big money in his corner. Season 3, episode 28, it is said that he is actively campaigning right now. Didn't he just become mayor? What is he campaigning for? He's trying to keep up his public image while very clearly neglecting his duties.
Yeah, because why waste money on actually doing your job rather than just making sure people like you, even though, people dislike you because you're not doing your job?
This happens with real politicians. He gives the key to the city, a high accolade that's supposed to be used for humanitarians and people who do great things, to the guy who reinvented the ball-peen hammer. And of course, in Candace Against the Universe, we know that he lives in a mayor's mansion. Now, mayor's mansions, while they do exist in real life, as far as I could tell, there's only 4 cities that still have a mayor's mansion, and some of them they don't even live in. He sold out Danville to Big Otto like the true patriotic American he is. He is weaponizing the American flag to get political points so that people will see it and just inherently like him. And most infuriating of all is his messaging. When he reads out what he liked about Candace's speech, thinking that it was a metaphor, he says, and I quote, that it is all of our responsibility to bust the little brothers of corporate greed, to the mom of fiscal responsibility. Now, Roger, much like I was saying earlier about BP Oil putting
all of the onus on, you know, the little guy instead of the big guy. Roger was the villain the whole time!
Burden of environmentalism on the consumer, Roger is now putting the burden of economic freedom on the citizens when he has unchecked executive power and full control to make changes that would benefit the people and take down corporate greed. He could be legislating protections for citizens and workers, but rather than do that, he is putting the burden of economic responsibility on the people of Danville, all while he sits in his marble palaces, his opera houses that he has built, his buildings outside of town, and his mayor's mansion, raking in the dough from Big Otto and all the other corporations that are in his pockets. Roger Doofenshmirtz has full executive authority to rule the tri-state area how he wishes.
And he does it
uses that
badly.
Power to line his own pockets. And that is the economic and political state of the tri-state area at the end of season 4. I hope season 5 is good. I should probably watch it. Maybe I'll post an update on my second channel. Go ahead and follow Guy Mr. Y, where I might be posting an update.
I'm sorry, I can't even. I like Phineas and Ferb. It's a well-written show, at least from the episodes I've actually seen. Again, still need to get around to watching season 5. But the fact that you could have so much world building not even be the main focus of it is just absurd. And the fact that seemingly the city just took a massive downturn from like this one guy getting elected. I can't. I don't even. I just can't. Oh, but yeah, that's definitely going to be it for now. So yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.